Hey, good morning. How are we doing today?
Good, sir.
All right, today we're going to go over your introduction to Warfighting MCDP 1. This is essentially the Marine Corps' Bible on how to fight. It talks about the ideology and the method in which we are to think on how to fight. It is not prescriptive in saying what you should do. All right, it's not a technical manual. It is a blueprint to show how you should think of fighting. All right, and these are your learning objectives. Okay? So we're going to go over understanding the evolution from where warfighting started to where we are currently here now. All right, we're going to understand the basic concepts of warfighting, and then we're going to talk about how the Marine Corps applies it through combined arms. All right, so look at the evolution of warfare. All right, we're going to start off with first defining war. All right, who can give me their definition of what they think war is? All right, go ahead.
So, good morning, sir. My definition of war is two or more parties who engage in a violent conflict because their interests do not align.
All right, so some key things there. And MCDP, I'll put up how MCDP defines it. But you talked about two parties, interests not aligning. All right, pretty much, you hit it right on the head. There's a struggle between two independent, hostile, and irreconcilable wills. All right, so those words, when you talk about the violent struggle, all right, you talk about irreconcilable wills, and it states that it's not something that was initially wanting to happen, but it has come to the terms where two people cannot agree, and now we have come to the fact where violence is now having to take place between two hostile parties. All right, so when we look back how it started, you look back in the days of the Roman Empire, Macedonian army, you think about Napoleon Bonaparte moving, his French forces throughout Europe, right? How they executed war was a war of attrition, right? And I'm going to use two of you, come up here real quick, to kind of illustrate this, all right? So we got call sign Rover here, call sign Matchbox. Right, we use call signs here to break down the barrier of rank, since we have a lot of MECEPs in our program. All right, so we use call signs instead of midshipman and rank. All right, so we got Rover here, who's contestant A. All right, track star, very fast, quick. All right, endurance. All right, and then we have Burns with a background of playing football, bigger guy, probably weighs maybe 40 pounds more than you. All right, knows how to push because he's an offensive lineman. All right, now as you guys come in, and let's say if this match is like a sumo match and you have to push somebody outside of the barrier, who do we think will win this?
Burns, sir.
Burns. You say Burns or Matchbox? You say Matchbox? All right, appreciate it. You sit down, we can talk about why, okay? Why, we said Burns real quick, why you said Matchbox, why Matchbox?
So as a matchbox, because his training and his height and weight size.
Training, experience, all right, because you can push, height, weight, all right, and since we're going, force on force, strength on strength, right? Or in this case, maybe not strength on strength, because your strength and speed, we'll talk about that later. But a frontal attack where it's going to require strength, power to be able to win. This is how we fight war with attrition, all right? And to define it, I would say that war of attrition is a war that is fought and only ends when one side has neither soldiers and equipment nor the determination left to continue fighting. Usually lasts over a long period of time. All right, so while they're pushing, right, maybe Rover, he doesn't have the equipment, right, so he doesn't have the size, right? And after a while, as he continues to get pushed, he's probably not going to have the determination of trying to continue to push somebody who's heavier than him, right? So when we look at, we illustrated just that one, just between those two, in a small little ring, like a sumo wrestling ring. If you apply that to army, an army, or two force-on forces going together at war, it's very similar. The advantage is going to go to the side that has the size, that has the enhanced weaponry, that has the endurance to continue to fight, and then also the mental will to continue to push and fight through. All right, and that is the law, or that is the war of attrition. And even though some like to say that we don't use the war of attrition, nowadays, I would beg to differ, because when we look at how Marine Corps operates in defense, and see here what John brought up is a fire plan sketch, which is essentially a map of the plan of doing a defense. You have your engagement area here, and the purpose of this plan and theoretically how this works is as the enemy approaches you, let's say this is north to south, as the enemy approaches you, it hits trigger lines that are in your engagement area. And each trigger line signifies that it is now time to execute fires from a certain platform. So the deeper we are, as they start coming in from all the way up here, they're hitting trigger lines that are probably from close air or deep air supports from firing agencies that are aerial. So you have rotary wing and fixed wing dropping bombs and killing as many bad guys, troops, mechanized assets, tanks, all those that are coming down. They're targeting them as they come down. Then they hit another line of about maybe 22, 23 clicks to where you're going to have M777s artillery firing artillery rounds. And as you get closer, you hit trigger lines that are applicable to the max effective range of each weapon system, all the way till you get down here where you got a little rifleman and his M4 that are engaging out to about 300 or 400 meters. All right. So the idea is that when the enemy gets here, they have already been tried it so much that when they get here, they become ineffective and they're pretty much getting slaughtered right here. All right. So we still use a form of attrition in our warfare. All right. But moving to maneuver warfare, okay? Where did this come about? Right? This came about really after the Vietnam War, all right? Where the U.S. went into the same mindset as they did when they went into World War II and they went into the Korean War, where we used the war of attrition to kill as many of our enemy as we could, to destroy as many of their property and their assets as we could, to gain as much territory as we could, and that deemed effective in winning. We did that in Vietnam, and for those of you who know how Vietnam ended, all right, and the struggle of wills and the struggle that they had with the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong, and we realized that the war of attrition didn't actually work, right? Does anybody know the casualty count between North Vietnamese army and Viet Cong to the U.S.? And not specifically, because I'm not going to say it specifically, but it is astronomically more for the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong than what U.S. casualties suffer, right? But yet we still look at the result and we say, okay, how is that possible, right? Well, it's because war of attrition didn't actually win the war, all right? What won the war, what simply outlasted the war, was the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong using a form of maneuver warfare called guerrilla warfare and guerrilla tactics. And have you all heard of guerrilla warfare and guerrilla tactics? All right, so what that is essentially attacking your enemy not at their strengths but their weaknesses. Okay, gaining an advantage and attacking their weaknesses. All right, and where this all came about when we look at like how we, doctrinalized it. So the use of this man right here, Air Force Colonel John Boyd. Right, he was an Air Force pilot, and what he came across, he studied. He said, "Hey, how in the Korean War, how did U.S. pilots outmaneuver enemy pilots with inferior planes?" All right, and at the end of the day, what he came up with is it was this decision making. Okay, and with that, he came up with the OODA loop. All right, so OODA, the OODA loop, and all the OODA loop is a process of thinking, right? A process of decision making. And with the O, so you observe, you orient, then you decide, and you act. And it started off as this continued loop, right? It says once you do all these things and you do the act part, then after your act, right, there are then action that happens afterwards, right? As a result of your act. Then now you have to observe again, and then you do the whole thing over. Well, then he continued to modify it to like the spider web that really all it's really saying is that you don't have to go through the whole steps to get back to observe. What really happens is that as you orient, as you decide, you're still observing, and if something happens, then you start the process back over, right? And it also talks about having that cognitive understanding through experience, that sometimes you can observe something and you can go straight to act. Right? That's the optimal thing that you want. That goes by training, experience, that you observe it, you already know what to do when you act. And here, what we do in the Marine Corps to try to eliminate that gap is we do what's called individual action, IA drills. You continue to do those, so now once something happens, right, you act on it immediately. All right, so look at warfare. We look at kind of like these tenets that go along with warfare. Like I said, avoiding strengths. So you want to avoid the strength of your enemy. You want to find and exploit their weaknesses, okay? You want to exploit their environment, meaning that if we use Vietnam, we look at the Viet Cong, they exploited the environment through insurgencies. They knew that they could use the terrain and mask their movements with the dense jungle, and they also used the population that they could blend into. You want to do multi-domain, multi-axis, all right? So when we think about, fighting, we talk about fighting from air, from land, from sea, cyber, information, right? Multi-axis, you're shooting here from the ground, but you also have indirect fires coming over, or you're coming over in a flanking maneuver, so you're hitting them in different ways in different areas, right? Tempo, like when to go fast, when to go slow, when to take a break, right? Because we talked about endurance. So you just can't continue to push. You sometimes have to stop, go into the defense, and then when you see you have an advantage, you push back and you go into the offense. Learning. MCDP is about learning, not only from past experience, but learning your enemy, learning what's going on. All right, that's why we do professional military education, is to learn. That's why we do wargaming, is to know and learn what we think our enemy would do. All this is really just to gain an advantage. That's what it's talking about. It's finding ways to gain an advantage. So you're not the little guy just continuously getting pushed back, right? You're figuring out angles and ways that you can maneuver around and use your strength. In the case of Rover, use his strength to be able to get Mac drops. All right, so we talk about MCDP 1 warfighting. There are 4 chapters, all right? Chapter 1, nature of war. Chapter 2, theory of war, preparing for war, and then conduct of war. All right, and these are really the tenets that go underneath each one of them. All right, and you see here, like the nature of war just talks about what comes natural in war. The theory of war is like, why do we do it? What's behind it? You see there active policy. So we're not just doing war just to have war and kill. It's an active policy to be able to get a strategic and political goal. And then how do we prepare? Train, learn, how we organize, equipped, right? And then when we actually do it, what does that look like? All right, so orient on the enemy, and then how we do is combined arms. Speaking of combined arms, you see here, definition, a full integration of arms in such a way that to counteract one, the enemy must become more vulnerable to the other, which is what we're doing, is putting the enemy in a dilemma. It's a no-win situation. And we use that through the Marine Corps MAGTAF, Marine Air Ground Task Force, right? We do it with troops on the ground, we do it with indirect fires, and we do it with aviation fires as well, and maneuverability through air assault. Okay? So putting them in that dilemma, so we're to pick, how am I going to die or how am I going to lose? But that's the only choice. All right, so a review. I'm confident that you understand, the difference between war of attrition, or at least the introduction and maneuver of warfare. You were exposed to the OODA loop. You understand maneuver warfighting is looking for a way to gain an advantage. You saw some of the concepts that were there, and then you understand that the Marine Corps uses combined arms. All right. So with that being said, I'll leave you on this quote. All right. I am confident that you understand the basic introduction of Marine Corps warfighting, and you can easily pick up MCDP 1 and get more into it and get more of the details. But I'll leave you with this quote here from General Krulak, 31st, a comment on the Marine Corps. This publication describes a philosophy which distinguishes the U.S. Marine Corps. The thoughts contained here are not merely guidance for action in combat, but a way of thinking. And then down here, it requires judgment and application. All right, so make sure you understand it requires your judgment, and it is a way of thinking. With that, I appreciate your time, and then you're dismissed.
Thank you, sir.